Well, that's not winning Feel-Good Movie of the Year. Well, that was a movie. Hello, welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I just watched The Devil All the Time, which was directed by Antonio Campos and starring Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson. It also had parts by Bill Skarsgard, Jason Clarke, Sebastian Stan, as well as, for you Potter fans, Harry Melling. It was actually really fun to see him in a role. I hadn't seen him since he played Dudley in Harry Potter, and he was really good in this. As well as most of the acting, I thought the majority of this cast was great, especially Bill Skarsgard was phenomenal. Like I said, most of the acting was great, but he stole the show. I loved him. So in case you don't know the plot of this film, it follows Tom Holland's character who grows up in the middle of nowhere down south. The plot follows him as well as his father, who's played by Bill Skarsgard, as both of the character arcs seem to mirror each other at different points, such as they both deal with corrupt pastors as well as different family issues. If I had to compare it to another movie, I'd compare it to A Place Between the Pines, but it's also kind of like that mixed with a little bit of Lawless, because it's definitely a lot darker and more violent than A Place Between the Pines, but it also has that same sort of story arc and storytelling format that I enjoyed a lot. Now, A Place Between the Pines had the issue of being a lot more interesting in the first part while it's following the first generation of this movie, and then when it moved on to the latter part of the movie where it followed their children, it wasn't as interesting, acting wasn't as good, and it kind of fell apart a little bit for me. And this movie is similar in the way that I enjoyed the beginning part with the father, Bill Skarsgård, way more than I enjoyed Tom Holland's character. Now, the biggest difference being, although I don't hate the Tom Holland section, it is the vast majority of this movie. The Bill Skarsgård section is only the first 30 to 40 minutes, and I enjoyed it so much more. Now, the rest of the movie is still very good, and I enjoyed all of it, but the first part with Bill Skarsgård, I just bought into a lot more. Now, part of that has to do with acting. It's not like the rest of the movie was horribly written or directed or anything like that. I enjoyed the movie a lot. I'm caught somewhere between a 7.5 and an 8 with this movie. I enjoyed it a lot. But Bill Skarsgård, I could just buy into a little bit more and enjoy a little bit more. This is also the section that had Harry Melling, and then Jason Clarke is kind of stretched between both sections here, as well as Sebastian Stan. But if you're going to compare Bill Skarsgård and Harry Melling to Robert Pattinson and Tom Holland, I would take Skarsgard and Melling over them. And I know I've been vocal in the past that I'm not particularly a fan of Tom Holland or Robert Pattinson, but it's not like they were bad in this movie. They weren't great, they weren't as good as the other people, but they weren't bad either. They were just fine. It's not like they were distracting from the movie. Well, I mean, a little bit, because you know who they are and you're just thinking, oh, look, it's Spider-Man and the vampire that sparkles. You're not distracted by their performances, though. You might be distracted because you know who they are, but it's not like they were bad enough to detract away from the movie. They weren't. But there is a big difference between being fine in a role and being great and standing out in a role, like I think both Skarsgård and Melling did. Pattinson and Holland were both fine. There's a difference. But this movie as a whole was very enjoyable, for lack of a better word, because enjoyable probably isn't the right word, because it's not a feel-good movie, it's not a happy movie, it's not the good guys winning over bad guys. This movie is just about the depravity of man and mankind being gross and just ugh. But the way the story is told is enjoyable, and the acting is enjoyable, and the directing is pretty good, and there's a lot of things to enjoy about this movie from a filmmaking standpoint. The story itself, though, if you're not into those kind of depressing movies that it's just, look, the world sucks, you're not gonna enjoy this movie. I enjoy that kind of movie, though. Maybe I'm a bit sick, but I enjoy that kind of movie. I enjoy these character study type movies. But I will also say that if you are into character study type movies, this is a bit shallow for a character study movie. It doesn't really get into depth into any of these characters and what makes them tick. It's kind of just showing how they act and react to situations and leaving it up to you to make an interpretation. So my review of this movie has to do with my interpretation of the movie. It may not actually be what the movie is about. Now, they do help with the interpretation thing a little bit because they do have a narrator constantly rambling on. The problem is, the narrator is constantly rambling on and it gets annoying. At several points during this movie, I kind of felt frustrated, like, show me, don't tell me. It's not like the narration was bad, but it was a little heavy-handed at points. Now, this was based on a book, so it was probably just them trying to be faithful to the book by lifting directly from the book and saying, here you go, this is the narration. But I feel like a more skilled writer and director probably could have told this a little bit better without all that narration, because in the end, it felt a bit manipulative. And it was. They're telling you what these characters are thinking and then telling you how to feel about this situation instead of just showing these characters live it out and actually say it in a practical way, but instead you've just got this narrator that you can fall back on to tell you what is happening inside and outside these characters. And honestly, those are my only gripes with this movie. I've laid it out all at the beginning. That's why it's not perfect, but it's still good enough to be a 7.5 to an 8, somewhere in there. You've got phenomenal acting, you've got very interesting writing. The fact that this movie is as long as it is and is as slow as it is, yet I was still interested the whole time, is a testament to this writing. It's very hard to keep a slow burn story interesting the whole time, yet I was interested the whole time. These characters are extremely well written and fleshed out in the opportunities that are left without the narration, and I am very invested and interested in everything that happened, and so all I can say is that this movie does what it's trying to do very well, aside from those 4 or 5 small issues. I will say that as a whole, this movie did still have that rookie type feel by the director. I did check his IMDb and he has done like 5 movies, but it doesn't feel like this was a necessarily skilled or veteran director that made this. It feels like it was a rookie indie project because it kind of was, but that doesn't detract from it overall. It still felt new and different and interesting despite it having so many similarities to other movies that I had seen. And the biggest complaints didn't even necessarily have to do with the directing or anything. My biggest drawback from this movie is I wasn't really interested in Tom Holland's portrayal of this character. Like I said, he wasn't distracting, but he just wasn't interesting either. Can you shut up, please? He's gone and mowed every freaking lawn on this block. Except mine. I guess there's some sort of union I'm not aware of. I don't even know if it was a talent thing for Tom Holland. I just think maybe a more fitting actor could have done a lot more with this character. Tom Holland just seems so squeaky clean, and he doesn't have a great accent. He kind of still has that little bit of British hiding in the background, where I just feel like maybe a Shia LaBeouf would have done a lot better. Not saying that Shia LaBeouf should have done this role, because this character is supposed to be a very upstanding and clean looking kind of guy, and I don't know if Shia LaBeouf can do that role anymore. But my point is, I don't know if Tom Holland was the right pick for it either, and it really felt like a studio choice. Like, here, we're going to draw in viewers with a Tom Holland, with a Robert Pattinson, and that's how we're going to get the viewers. Meanwhile, actors like Sebastian Stan and Bill Skarsgard and Harry Melling are all doing better than the actors presented to the mainstream audience. Like, here, come watch my movie because it's got big name actors in it. Like, seriously, you go onto the IMDb and the first 2 listed are Robert Pattinson and Tom Holland, in that order. Tom Holland is the main character. Robert Pattinson probably has 40 minutes of screen time in this movie, but he's the first one billed on IMDb because they're trying to get people to notice that he's in this movie because he's a hot topic right now. And it's manipulative. The only reason he was probably put in this movie was for that purpose, and it's kind of frustrating because you can tell. Not because they're bad, you can just tell that it's a politics thing rather than just a pure talent thing. And that's distracting when you're aware of that. I don't want to give away any spoilers or anything, but they follow a very similar pattern in the first arc and the second arc, and you've got a 30 to 40 minute section for one, and then you've got almost 2 hours in the other, and it's like, I would have preferred you swap the runtime for these 2 storylines, because I was much more interested in Bill Skarsgård's character. He's coming back from war, he's dealing with PTSD, he's dealing with all sorts of weird religious imagery being thrown at him, and having to deal with the Harry Melling character, who is very well written and acted out, and a much more interesting character than Robert Pattinson's version, in my opinion. And I was like, I just wanted to see more of that and a little bit less of the other. That being said, if you had taken out the whole Bill Skarsgård and Harry Melling storyline and just had Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson, I would still enjoy that movie a lot and I wouldn't be complaining. But the fact that you showed me that you had something better and then went with the slightly worse version is frustrating, because you've got a great storyline, but you've got an even better one. So you've got 2 and you favorite the not as good one. Not that it's way worse, it's worse by like half a star, but like, seriously, there's a better one that you kind of push to the side in favor of the slightly less interesting and slightly worse acted version. But at the end of the day, it's still on my top 10 movies for this year list. I know that means a lot more in different years other than 2020, but right now I have it at the number 3 spot. So it's not like it wasn't a good movie. I know in these reviews I tend to focus more on the negatives than the positives, but there's just a lot more you can say about negatives and positives. But once again, here's the positives. Great acting, great writing, interesting directing. I don't want to say that it was great, but it definitely was solid and had some interesting stylings to it. And overall, it was a very interesting story. Even though it was one that I've seen similar things to before, I was never bored during this movie, and it was definitely a new, interesting take on it. I know, like I said, it was based on a book, so I don't know when the book came out. I don't know how accurate this is to the book. I don't want to talk about any comparisons with that, because I'm just coming at from a purely movie standpoint, and this movie was well made. If it's not accurate to the book, I'm sorry for all the book fans, but it's just a good story. Just taken out of context on its own, it's a good story. A sad story. Definitely sad and hard to watch. Like I said, if you're into feel-good movies, if you like movies where the good guys win and it's all happy and everything works out together perfectly, this isn't that kind of movie. That's not the kind of movie for you, so don't go watch it because I recommended it and then come back to me all mad because it wasn't that kind of movie. I'm saying it is a well-made movie. It is a dark movie. It's a twisted movie. There's a lot of imagery in this that if you're sensitive to it, it could keep you up at night. There's some specific imagery that has to do with all ends of the spectrum. You've got murder, you've got rape, you've got animal cruelty, you've got all sides of the spectrum here, and it's hard to watch at times. It really is, but the movie is well made, and it is well crafted, and it is an interesting story. The one drawback being, I don't know what the message was necessarily. I don't know what the morality of this movie was necessarily. There's definite messages in there, but it doesn't spoon feed it to you. Now, I don't always mind that in a movie. I don't need messages spoon fed to me, but I do understand that a lot of people find ambiguity, especially at the ends of movies, very frustrating, and this movie is a bit ambiguous. And you will find that some critics will take offense to that it's not clear enough what it's trying to say. I don't know that that's a detractor for me, but it's definitely not a plus. Like, if you're going to make a point, and this movie obviously was designed to make a point, it's not, just a happy-go-lucky story, it's not just there for entertainment's sake. The only reason you would make this movie is to make a point about what is being said. If you are going to make a point about what's being said, and it's not some sort of deep philosophical question they're going to tell in a French or artsy way like that, you might as well just write out what you're saying, because why not? You're trying to make the point to the masses in a not so artsy way, so might as well just write out what you're saying. You've already got the narrator that you're writing out everything else. Why wouldn't you just tell us, the audience, what you're trying to say with this? Because at the end of the movie, I didn't know what the creators of the movie, or the book for that matter, were trying to say with this story. Is it about people in power being corrupt? Is it about religion being corrupt? Is it about people manipulating the people that are beneath them? Is it about the dangers of misinterpreting scripture and the Bible? Because all of that is very prevalent in this story, but none of it is explicitly written out as the point of the story. So I know this sounds like I'm bashing on it. I'm not. I'm just asking, what was it about? And I can take out what I want from the movie, but I don't know that a lot of people are going to enjoy that. I don't mind it. Like I said, I already came up with my own reasoning and my own theory for what this movie was designed to say, but I know that that's going to annoy a lot of people when they're at the end of the movie, the credits start rolling, and they go, why did I watch that? A lot of people won't know. And maybe that's just an American thing. Based on recent conversations I've had, Americans don't seem to want to think for themselves as far as art goes. They want to be told what to think. And this movie's not going to do that for you. So if that's something that you need an explanation written out for you in your movies, then once again, this movie isn't for you. So what I'm trying to say, to wrap it all up, is that this movie, to me, appears to have a very, very small audience. And that small audience is going to be obsessed with this movie and love this movie, but it might not have a widespread appeal, which would explain bringing in Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson to try to get that wide appeal. I don't know that it's going to work, though. It's probably going to get a lot of fangirls to watch the movie and then be confused why they watched it. But, like I said, small cult following that's going to be obsessed with this movie. That's my prediction for it. And I think I'm going to be a part of that group because I enjoyed it a lot, but I definitely will understand why a lot of people don't, Right now, it's pretty split on IMDb. The critics aren't a huge fan, and there's a decent following from the fans. We'll see how that plays out, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's got a mediocre rating in the end. So anyway, that's what I had to think of it. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it. If you've seen it, if you haven't, it's on Netflix. If you have an account, or if you know somebody with an account, go ahead and check it out and let me know. Unless, of course, my description of it lets you know already, it's not your kind of movie. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please remember to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye. God, it's been loud. I normally film at night, but this movie came out at 12 West Coast time, which means it was 3 a.m. here. I didn't really feel like watching a movie. It's 2 hours long. It's over 2 hours long. I would have been up till 5 a.m. So I woke up and watched it today, and I didn't want to wait till tonight. Okay. Bye, guys.